Alrighty, good morning, Grove Church. Good to see you guys. Hope y'all are enjoying the a little bit cooler weather this morning. We're excited you're here to worship with us this morning. Before we do that, though, turn around, say good morning to someone around you, or introduce yourself if you don't know them. And then we'll go ahead and stand up, and we'll start worshiping.
In the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender, you are breaking new ground. So I yield to you and to your careful hand. When I trust you, I don't need to understand. Make me a vessel, make me an offering, make me whatever you want me to be. I came here with nothing, and all you have given me, Jesus, bring
He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am here, bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. And all of a sudden, I'm unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your perfections are for me. So, and how he loves us, oh, and oh, how he loves us, how he loves us so. See, he is jealous. He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am sea, bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. And all of a sudden, I'm unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your reflections are before me. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Lord, we praise your name together. Jesus, thank you for giving us life. Thank you for your overwhelming love shown to us through the cross. Thanks for dying in our place and taking our sin on you. Thanks for rising from the dead to give us hope, to give us life. And we proclaim your name today. We worship it. Thank you that we can come and sing. Thank you that we can come and hear your word. I pray that it would transform us this morning together as a church to know you more deeply and to live a life that's worthy of you. Amen. You guys can have a seat.
Hey, good morning. Hey, if you are new, I'm Charlie, the lead pastor here, and really glad you're here. If you're here in the building, you're joining us online. Either way, we're really glad that you are here and are worshiping with us today. We are in the third week of a 5-week series we're doing in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we've kind of mentioned this every week. It's kind of a weird book, and at times it can be a little bit depressing. And if you're familiar with 3-act plays or trilogies or whatever, it really is kind of that middle piece where it kind of can be the heaviest. And so we've got a little bit of that today. Some really heavy things that the author here is going to talk to us about. So I just kind of prepare you for that. But I think even in the midst of kind of some of this heaviness, we're going to always be looking and seeing the glimmers of hope of the gospel. So we got Ecclesiastes here. It's kind of got a lot of different things on my mind, and I'm watching the news this week with kind of some of this stuff in mind. And it seems a little early, but it's kind of been like this for a while. Even though it's July of 2023, it seems like we are neck deep right in the presidential election. And I heard something this week that is it's a big deal. This is a huge deal, right? It turns out that in 2024, it is going to be the most important election of my lifetime, which, that's kind of a big deal, right? I'm 51 years old, and here we are. We are having the most important election of my lifetime. So some of you are laughing, and some of you are new, we're a while. I've been around a long time, and I have had a lot of most important elections of my lifetime. And so either we are on a constant trajectory this way, they just keep getting more important, or they're lying to us, right? Or they're just kind of making they're making a thing about it. Because here's the deal. Here's the thing. First time I voted was in 92 when Clinton became president. First and to this day only Arkansan to become president. It was in 92. And then in 94, I think was the first time that I heard this idea. I had just gotten married, and it was we've been married about 6 months. It's we'll call it the first adult election for me, like a fully graduated guy. Like, it's the first time I'd heard it. This is the most important election of our lifetimes. Well, so the first time you hear it, wow, it's kind of a big deal, right? Because Clinton was doing this, and because we got to make sure that we stop and do this and keep this, and we got to decide who we really are, battle for the soul of the nation. Like, whoa, this is a big deal. And so if that's election number 1, this would be the 16th national election since then, including that one, right? I think maybe twice, in 98 and 2002, maybe they didn't say this, but like I believe every election since then, most important election of our lifetime. And after a while, you can just kind of start to get a little bit cynical about it. It's like you start to think, maybe this thing is a game. Maybe it's a game. And I've had a couple of conversations over the last couple of weeks with two very, very different people. They are different races, different political parties, different socioeconomic statuses, two very different people, two completely different walks of life, different political parties, and different issues. One was an economic issue and one was a social issue, and they bring this up to me. I'm not going to talk about what it is or the specifics of it because it doesn't really matter for what I'm saying. They're talking about, what do you think about this piece of legislation that's being proposed around this thing? And I said, well, this issue this is talking about, it seems like that there is a much deeper rooted societal issue that this is built on. And it seems like no one is really willing to identify what the real source of the problem is. Identify what is it, and let's do something about this. No one seems to want to do that. It seems like what they do want us to do is to analyze a couple of the systems and argue about the solution to the symptom, but not really deal with the problem. I said it to both of them. And I said, it seems like that's really what they want us to do. That they want us arguing, fighting with each other about small solutions to symptoms of really large problems. Seems like the whole thing is designed this way. And if you've been around here a while, it's not going to become any surprise to you for me that I think that. If you're new, that might be, whoa, I never heard anybody talk like that, right? The reality of it is, you start talking like that, you might think, man, that dude's cynical. Is that the right word? Is cynical the right word? Is pessimistic the right word? Is realistic the right word? And I think about these things where you really start thinking about some of the systems that exist in our world. And you take a really just kind of honest look, and not just our political system, but just systems everywhere, just kind of the way the world is. When you take a step back and you look at it and you're like, I don't know about that. And all of a sudden you kind of get labeled cynic, pessimist, downer. That's depressing. It's depressing to think like that. Well, is it depressing to be realistic about something? Because the real question is it right? Is it right? Is it right? Even if it is right, is it wrong to notice? But the real question is, when we are faced with a system, a situation, a way the world is, and we perceive it or realize it to be negative, to be oppressive, to be hurtful, to be damaging in some way, and we realize it, the real question, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? And so we have this whole book here in Ecclesiastes where this really wealthy and powerful man, Solomon, goes around on what seems like a whole series of social experiments of trying to figure out what the world really is and where and how do I really find meaning in this world. And we start to see, and we saw this last week in Ecclesiastes chapter 2. He's like, some people think that the world is about pleasure and getting and just doing what you want and just enjoying life. So I'm not going to deny myself anything, and I'm just going to go for it and say yes. And he had the resources to be able to do it. And he says at the end, he's like, the happiness was fleeting, and there was no real meaning to it. And so he's like, this idea that you can just happy yourself into real meaning into life, he says it's like striving after wind. It's pointless. Then we move to chapter 3. We're going to be primarily in chapter 4 today, but I just want to tell you a little bit about chapter 3. Chapter 3, you go to chapter 3, and we get a poem there that you may be familiar with because it is based on a song that I will in fact not be singing for you. But I could, by the Byrds, to everything, there's a season, turn, a time to be born, a time to die. Again, still not going to sing it for you. The tune is in my head, and I'm almost singing it, but I'm not. And it comes from this passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, where it's essentially saying it just seems like the way the world works is just a cycle. It just kind of it comes and goes, ups and downs, ins and outs. It's just kind of this repeating cycle. And then he goes, man, I look at all these people who are working. Like, what is the point of work? You work, you work, you work, you die. What are you even doing? And you're like, bro. He's like, it doesn't seem like there's, and then it's kind of when he gets in there, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more at the end. He's like, it just seems like we make our life about work, and really it should just be, maybe you should just enjoy stuff. And then he continues on, and then you look at people, and they say, just look at death. And again, this is really just kind of next level kind of stuff. He's like, look at death. I look at people, and they die. What's that different than an animal? They live a life for a little while, and then they die. Same as an animal. What is really the difference? And you're like, man, settle. I mean, oof. It gets real heavy. It gets real overwhelming, where he just keeps saying, I just look at the way people are, what they do, what they focus on, and he just keeps coming back to this idea. It seems meaningless. It seems like it is people trying to catch wind. And he uses this phrase, under the sun. The way this world is and its system, it seems like it is impossible to find real meaning there. And we continue on to chapter 4. We're going to kind of look at some more things that he's saying, that he feels like he's observing as he's kind of looking at this system. Verse 1, Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Again, I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared, just be ready. Be ready here. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. Ugh. And then it gets worse. But better than both is the one who has never been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. And so we have, again, what feels like a very depressing analysis of kind of the way that the world is. And at his core, what he's saying is this, is that he looks around at the world and injustice exists, and injustice, it seems like injustice runs rampant in our world. Everywhere he looks, there's injustice. We've got people who have money, we've got people who have power, and we've got the oppressed. And the people who are oppressed, they have no comforter. There seems to be no meaning there. And he says, it seems like it's just better to have not ever lived, to not ever experience, to not to have ever seen that, than to be here and to see it. And it just, it feels to me, it feels overstated, doesn't it? But does it? I think these are the questions we're supposed to ask as we analyze it. But let me tell you the question that I ask, which is one of the things that makes this book so weird. The guy who wrote this is the wealthiest man alive at the time, one of the most powerful men alive at the time, and had just spent some time in Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I'm going to pursue all the pleasure in the world, and it says that he is hiring slaves to build elaborate things for him. And you're like, and now you're going to look and say, man, there's a lot of oppressors in the world, and the people who are oppressed don't seem to have a come. Like, bro, how far did you have to go to figure that out? Look in the mirror. You didn't have to make it very far to figure this out. And it's just kind of weird that he can kind of take this point and like step outside of a system that he is clearly a part of. And he kind of, when he takes a step back and he says, this is bad. Like you want there to be. And again, this is not his biography. And so we're not going to get that level of satisfaction. But you would like to hope that one of the results of this social experiment that he goes on is to recognize his own place in it. But what he sees, is just rampant injustice. And so here we are 2,000, 3,000 years later. What would he say if he saw it today? it would seem, back to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, we're just kind of repeating a lot of the same things. And even if we decide, hey, let's just set aside the arguments that we like to have here in the U.S. about who is or is not oppressed and why they are or are not oppressed, I mean, there is slavery still existing all over the world. And there is extreme poverty that if you saw, it would blow your mind. In countries that have plenty of wealth and a ruling, elite, powerful, wealthy class of people. It exists everywhere. It continues to exist here, where the people who have power do not want to share it and will oppress and hurt people when they get the opportunity. That is the system that we live in, and it does not seem to be. In some ways, maybe it's getting better. In some ways, it's not. It's another thing that we like to fight about. But let's just take a moment and not think about the arguments and the fights that we get drug into, but let's just kind of just take this again as the experiment that he's going through. You take a look at it. There's a lot of oppression, a lot of injustice in this world, and he continues. Verse 4. And I saw that all toil and achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. There's some weird phraseology in there, but I think we kind of get to what he's talking about here. I think we'll agree with it. He's like, I look around and I see all the people who are just working so hard, that have just made their life, have dedicated their life to their work. And it seems like everyone is driven out of this desire to, this guy has more than me. I got to make sure I have more than this guy. I've got to make sure that I've got to be the best, that I have the most. And so I'm going to work myself and just constantly work and pursue and do all of these things driven out of an envy or jealousy. And so not only is injustice running rampant, we've got this epidemic of jealousy, and jealousy as a motivating factor, he's like, it's meaningless. Jealousy is meaningless. And then he uses this imagery where it's like, we got these people, and they're like, it says, it has specifically, fools fold their hands. Like, that guy's got more than me. I'm gonna work hard, and I'm gonna show him, and I'm gonna have more. And he's like, better, like if you're gonna work with one hand, and with this hand, why don't you just take a beat? It's better to work with one hand and have tranquility and peace with the other one than to be like this. If anything, this is like this. Like I like this verse because I believe it is at least a small advocate for nap culture. We got any nappers here in the room? You can be honest. Oh man, love a nap. Like a good solid 20, 30-minute power nap in the middle of the day. Oh man, you could be working. Yeah, I could. Or I could take 20, 30 minutes and give myself a minute. And the problem is what's going to happen over the next 3 hours is going to be better than the 3.5 I would have been if I had to get my little nap. I feel like sometimes I was born into the wrong culture because there's some nap cultures out there, right? I'm 100% in. Like, well, you could be achieving more. You could be doing more. You could be earning more. You could be accomplishing more. Yeah, I could, or I couldn't. What if I didn't? What if we didn't? What if we decide that we were going to make rest and peace and tranquility more a part of our life? And I mean, I just got to slow down a little bit. And I'm going to do things like come to church and be in a small group. I'm going to do things like taking a nap. I'm going to do things like I'm just going to go a little bit slower. I'm going to enjoy this life rather than spending my life both fists like this, working hard to prove something to somebody who may or may not know that you're here or care one bit that you're working hard. He says it's meaningless, this envious, workaholic drive that so many of us have, that it's rooted in this jealousy of that somebody might have more than me. Verse 7, again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. So he's describing kind of almost like a bit of a subset of that. You got some people who are just like, they're working so hard, and because they're working so hard, they don't really have time for anybody. They don't really have any friends. They don't have any family. They don't have any real brothers, people who can be with them, because I don't have time for that, because I've got to keep going. And so they just continue to work. And then one day it says this hypothetical person goes and looks around and is like, what am I even doing? I'm working hard so I can do what? With nobody. And he's like, that sort of thing where we live these lives of isolation. And he continues on, he describes it this way. And you're going to hear some verses here that might feel familiar to you, that you've heard in maybe in different contexts. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Again, some of those verses are kind of the verses you'll see a lot. Right? They're the kind of things that you would put on an inspirational poster or coffee mug or whatever and have it to kind of talk about how important it is to have people around you. And he's like, we got people who are out there, they're just working really hard and wake up one day like, I don't know why I'm doing it. And then he says, because here's the deal. There's going to come a time when life is going to punch you in the mouth. You're going to get hit hard by life. And now you're on the ground and you can't get up. And you don't have anybody to help you get up. Or you're going to find yourself in a place where it is cold. Where you're going to, maybe literally, maybe metaphorically, where things are so cold that I cannot keep warm. I cannot regulate myself. I cannot be okay. But if I had somebody, I could. But we see people constantly living lives in isolation, working hard, accomplishing things, doing things, and then when life happens, they fall and there's no one there. They're able to just snap. They freeze to death. We see these things literally, we see them metaphorically. And so as he's kind of making this journey and kind of looking and kind of trying to evaluate what is going on, he sees that injustice is running rampant, that jealousy is meaningless, and that isolation is destructive. He looks around at this system, the way that this world is set up, the way that this world is designed, and he's like, there's just oppression and hurt and pain that is caused by this wealth and power gap that exists in the world. And then we see people who are just driven by jealousy, driven by envy, driven by I gotta have more than what my neighbor does, and they're striving and take no moment to enjoy what they have, because they're not driven by enjoyment, or they're driven not by having but by having more. And it's like, it's pointless. And then all these people, they end up completely and totally isolated, and when life happens, they're undone by it because they've got nobody there with them. Now, I don't know what you think when you hear this. I don't know what you feel. But if I were to tell you, if I were to just kind of put them out there, hey, there's oppression in the world. Living a life driven by envy of what somebody else has is pointless. And if you're by yourself, life's going to get you at some point. I don't think any of us would disagree with any of those points, even if we don't like hearing them. And certainly don't like hearing them all at once. And it's not the bit of encouragement that we necessarily want when we come to church. The reality is all of those things feel true. And if I were to talk about these things and read these passages to you, and I were to tell you that this book was written by somebody who wrote it last month, you'd be like, makes sense. I can see why someone would think that right now. To me, the most fascinating part of this is this book was written 3,000 years ago. That's the thing that is most fascinating to me. He is describing a world system that is almost 3,000 years old. That 3,000 years later we can go, I don't like to think about it, but yeah. And kind of let's go back to kind of where we started. If all of that's true, well then what? Well, let me tell you a little bit kind of how things kind of work behind the scenes in my life. I kind of have a rhythm that I have with when I preach. And so if I'm going to preach on a Sunday, really like the Friday, Saturday before, so like 8-9 days before, I like to think about, okay, I need to know what I'm thinking about when I'm preaching about that following Sunday, because I want to spend the week kind of just thinking about the big idea, because I'm always looking for examples in my life or in the world that I see around me, examples of like, okay, these principles that we're getting from the Bible that are true, what are some really kind of tangible examples out there in the world that can kind of illustrate that this is true? And let me tell you, when this is the passage that you're thinking about for a week, it's like, I'm going to spend my week just looking out in the world and seeing if any of this is true. Let me tell you, you're not having a great week. And this is not an exaggeration, because then where you find yourself after a full week of doing this, you find yourself at 7:30 on a Sunday morning at McDonald's by yourself looking at your notes, and you cry a little bit. And that's where my heart was this morning. Because the reality of it is, it has been a week. It's been a week where people are getting hurt and hit by life in a way they didn't do anything wrong. You know, they didn't do anything wrong, and boom, you get a diagnosis from a doctor that you did not expect, that overwhelms and upends your entire life. Stories of people who are talking to me about how to overcome so much pain and hurt and trauma from their past. People coming up to me confessing things that they have done. Self-inflicted wounds, but I want to be better, but I don't know how. And you see it everywhere you look. You don't have to go and watch the news to read and hear about a world that is unfair to people, where something happens to them that they don't deserve, where people who are living a life a certain way and they think that if I do this, I'll be happy, and then I'm not, and then finally life just hits them and just wipes them out. You don't have to watch the news. All you have to do is open your eyes and look around. And if you look, this is exactly what you see. People striving because of envy. You'll see injustice running rampant. You'll see people living in isolation. So what are we going to do about it? Because there is a fine line for so many of us between a realistic view of a broken world and a broken system and a surrender to hopelessness. Because here's what I want to tell you. It is very unlikely that there is anyone here in this room that when they look at the world and its brokenness and the systems that are designed to hurt us and just the randomness of life, that it can be so hurtful and painful, it is unlikely that there is anybody here in this room that has experienced that and believes that, maybe not experience, like experience that, who believes that the world is more broken than what I do. But I promise you this, I am not and will not surrender to hopelessness. Even if I have to take a few minutes awkwardly in a McDonald's by myself with my head down, I don't need any attention, cry, even if I need to take a second, I'm not going to surrender to hopelessness, because behind every story that someone has shared with me in the last week, behind every pain is the beauty and the joy that they shared the story. And that they said, I want better. I want different. I want God. I want Him to be there. Because even though all of those things are true and we are describing a broken system, here is what we will do. Here's the commitment we will make. We will live above the system. We will live above that system. Because the thing that he always says, under the sun, it's meaningless. Under the sun is meaningless. And we will talk about this every week. That may be absolutely true. That under the sun there is meaningless and hopelessness and pain and destruction and meaningless, but we do not live there. Even if God has placed us there, our hearts and our lives are with the one who created the sun, who lives life above the sun. And what he has called us to do is to live a life different, a life full of hope and light beyond what this world's system is describing. And even in these passages that can be filled and seem like they're filled with such despair, there's glimmers of what it is he's called us to do. He sees people living in isolation and how meaningless that is. And he's like, surround yourself with people. People who you know will have your back. People that you can talk to about your worst moments. And when you have your worst moments, when life hits you, you know that they've got you. You need people like that in your life. He said, don't live a life driven by envy. Live a life that allows you to work to have what you need and then enjoy what you have. Have a little tranquility built in with your labor. What if you just did that? And so he's talking about there's a solution to this jealousy. There's a solution to this isolation. And we work our way back up. We go up. And then there's the oppression in the world. And I find it very interesting that he gives little bits of solutions to those last two, but doesn't say anything in the first one. There's nothing that he says that says, and here's what you can do to rid the world of injustice. In these last two, he talks about how you can keep yourself from being infected. But in the world system, he doesn't mention anything that we can do to rid the world of injustice. Now, don't hear me saying more than what I'm saying. Of course, the Bible tells us that we should be people who are bringing hope and life to people who are hurting, who are oppressed. The entire book of Amos is dedicated to it. Jesus talks about it. Paul talks about it. It's all throughout there. But in this book, he's talking about solutions to problems. And the reality of it is we could all work as hard as we wanted to. And this world tomorrow, the next day, it's going to be full of the same sort of oppression and division. Does that mean we don't fight? Does that mean that we don't bring hope and life and light to people who need it? Absolutely not. And some of the best stories that have been written talk about how hopeless it can feel at the darkest times and how incredible and overwhelming evil and death may be. And even though it may feel pointless to fight it, we fight because it is right. We cannot bring an end to world hunger, but I can feed someone that God brings into my path. I cannot end poverty in Northwest Arkansas, but I can bring school supplies for one kid to give him one little boost forward, to help him and for some people. He can just know that somewhere out there are people that believe in him, that believe in her. I cannot end the need for foster care and adoption in our world, but I can become a foster parent. I can support foster parents. I can adopt one kid. I'll tell you this story. We have our precious little youngest daughter, Layla, who we adopted from foster care. We have called her historically. We did this a lot more when she was little. We called her our little starfish. And I don't know if you're familiar with this little parable that kind of exists out there in the world of all these starfish that get swept out onto the beach. And they're going to suffocate there if they don't get back in the water. There's thousands of them. And this little boy is walking down the beach, throwing them in one at a time. There's thousands of them. This one little kid. He's throwing them in there, and this cynical old man comes up to him and says, "Look at all these thousands of starfish. You can't get them all in there. You're not making any difference." Kid reaches down, grabs another starfish, throws it in, and says, "Made a difference for that one. Made a difference for that one." I by no means think that what our family did in the time that we were a foster care or foster parents or when we adopted, that we've changed the world. But you know what we did? We changed her world. And she changed our world. And bit by bit, more and more of us are grabbing our own starfish and throwing them back in. And we can make we can make a difference in the lives of the people that God has brought to us by bringing hope and light to them. And we fight and we live above the system because it is the right thing to do, and it is what Jesus Christ has called us to bring hope and light. He said he was the light of the world to bring hope and life to the world, the one who lives above the system to bring hope and life. And he says to you, you are now my light, a reflection of who I am, to bring hope and life to a world and a system that if you look at it on its own, is depressing, but I don't look at it on its own. I look at the God who lives above it, who has reconciled me, who at my worst moment, at my most sinful moment, when I got hit in the mouth the hardest, put his hand up to me, sent his son Jesus to die for me, to give me life. And he says, and I want you to be a carrier of that life and that light to a world that needs it. I'm not going to be defined by this system. I'm not going to allow myself to be made hopeless by this system. I'm going to live on a different level. I'm going to live above it with Jesus Christ and bring hope and life. And we're going to say, we're not going to live in isolation. We're not going to be driven by envy. And we will be the comforters for the people in this world that need comfort. And so individually, as families, as groups, and as a church, this is who God has called us to be. The carriers of life and light to a dark and broken place that will never surrender to hopelessness, but will bring joy, life, hope, and peace. Let me pray. God, I just pray. Nobody wants to surrender to hopelessness. A lot of us here, God, we've been punched in the mouth. We've been hit. We've been hit. The pain of loss of loved ones. Scary diagnoses from doctors. Having grown up and experienced real oppression. We've experienced the hopelessness of striving for more. We've been alone. But God, I pray that no matter if that defines our past or in this moment we're allowing it to define our present, we will not surrender to that. We will not give in to hopelessness. We will not give in to despair. We will not allow ourselves to be undone by what the world is doing to us, what people are doing to us, what we've done to ourselves. We will not surrender. We will not be subject to this world and its systems. But we will live above it with your Son and through your Son, Jesus Christ, whose life and death have reconciled us to you. And we are so thankful for the gospel and for your Son, Jesus Christ, who makes it possible. And it is in his name that we pray. Amen.
Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Teach my soul to rise to you when temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand off on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. So teach my soul to rise to you when temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand or fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. And when I cannot stand or fall on you, Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need
cast my mind to Calvary. Jesus bled and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone. Messiah still and all alone. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. And on the third, that break of dawn, Son of Hell rose again. Oh, trample death, where is your sting? The angels roar for Christ the King. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Shall return in robes of white. The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints, my gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God.
God, we do just praise you for knowing that we can have a personal relationship with a God who gives us hope. You are our living hope in the midst of all the things that goes on in our current world, God. You are something to be celebrated, and we get to know you personally, God. So I pray that we would all keep this on our mind. I pray that we would remind each other throughout our week. God, thank you for time to come together and worship together and learn together. I pray that we would be a church that is a light together throughout the community and reminding other people of this hope. Just remind each other that we have a God to be praised. We have a God to love and be excited about your hope. God, you give us a hope and you raising from the dead and a hope of just knowing that you're the creator of all good things, God. So we praise you for that. In your name I pray. Amen. I was really encouraged by this sermon. I mean, it's not encouraging thinking of all the bad stuff, obviously, going on in our world, but it's awesome thinking about our God who is the creator of good things. I think about all of the bad things going on, and I just have to remind myself, God didn't create those things. God didn't cause these bad things to come up in our life, and just remembering that we can have a relationship with the one who created all of the good stuff, all of the beautiful things outside, all of the happy things going on, and even the things that we can't see right now, we know good things are going to come from him. And it just makes it a little bit easier to celebrate, and that just reminds me of he is actually the hope, and that's the meaning of hope in my mind, of we have something so much better to look forward to. And kind of what Charlie mentioned in the sermon, one of the things that of how I do this is just getting connected with other people that also believe in God and see him as our hope. You just get to celebrate good things together. It can be hard being isolated, and it's easy in our culture just to look at all the bad stuff. I mean, you just scroll through your Instagram feed, and it's like bad news line after bad news line. But even just sitting down to dinner with other people who celebrate good things and celebrate hope and celebrate just knowing God and encouraging each other is a really cool way to be reminded of the hope that we have in God. And so one way, if you don't have a community like that, it might be an awesome opportunity to get plugged in here. So if you're new and this is your first Sunday with us, or even if you've been visiting a few times and you haven't gotten connected, we have cards in the back of every single seat back here. You can fill that out, put in any information, let us know who you are and how we could get connected with you and how we could be praying for you. And if you fill one of those out, we have a connect desk out in the lobby, and you can drop it there. We would love to get to know you, even if you've been coming here the last couple of months, whatever it is. We would love to actually put a face with a name and get connected with you somehow. And we also have or if you want to do that online, sorry, I forgot to mention, we have grovechurch.org/connect. You can fill out any of those things online, and we have events listed there. Anything that you would want to do Grove Church related is online, and you can find that there. Also, if you're interested in getting connected with the church financially, we have offering buckets in the back. So you can do that there, or you can do it online, thegrovechurch.org/give. And there's a whole system that'll kind of walk you through to get involved in that way. Other than that, the only other thing we have going on right now is Leverett backpacks. Everybody get pumped, because it's a really easy way to get plugged into our community. And talking about being a light in our community, this is a really awesome way to serve and be that. There's a lot of kids that need some school supplies before they go back. So there's backpacks out in the lobby and just list that you can grab, and you can just head to Walmart, whatever you want, and grab that school supplies list. And you have all the way up until August 6th. On August 6th, we'll be collecting all of those and giving them to Leverett Elementary. So if you're interested in getting connected and serving with the church and getting to impact the community, that's a really great way to get involved with that. Other than that, stay cool if you can and enjoy your Sunday.